Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of Blackhawks Banter, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. This is episode number 30, the Ed Belfour episode of the Blackhawks Banter. My name is Greg Boysen. I will be the ringleader tonight as we talk to our Blackhawks crew. As always, we have Gail Kauchuk, Brooke LoFurno, and Shaun Filippelli. How's everybody doing this wonderful, wonderful evening?
Well,
Doing well.
Great. We got lots to talk about tonight, but before we do, be sure if you're watching us on Facebook, you clicking the like button. If you're over on YouTube channel, hit subscribe, and don't forget all of the audio only versions of all of our broadcasts, not only Blackhawks Banter, but all the Hockey Writers shows we've been producing across the board are available on all your favorite podcast outlets. So wherever you listen to your podcast, search for the Hockey Writers, follow or subscribe, and you'll never miss a show. So now that our legal department makes sure we have to say that before every episode. So now that that's out of the way, let's get to the meat and potatoes of today's episode. We're going to get right into some Blackhawks issues, even though we're not involved in any of these great games that have been going on the last few days. There's still plenty of pressing issues as we head into what should be a very busy summer. During this season, we spent a lot of time talking about the Blackhawks' depth or lack thereof at the center position. And so we're going to open up with a quick little question. Based on who's on the roster now, be it healthy or maybe not healthy, and assuming everybody is coming back for next season, who are your top four centers come October? Gail, we're going to start this one with you. Who you got down the middle?
okay. Number one, fingers crossed and prayers sent out to the universe that Jonathan Toews is healthy and able to come back. Lord knows these fellas need their captain's face-off success as well as his leadership back on the team. So number one. Number two, Kirby Dach. He's the face of the franchise, the future face of the franchise, the heir apparent to Toews. Hopefully he's going to be healthy off of his wrist surgery. He's shown us great potential and hopefully is ready to take that next step. So he should be number two. Number three is the one I had the hardest time with. I was going out through the lines and, kind of penciling people in. And I kind of had to just give it up because first I was going to say Strome. But again, there's all these other people that you want to have, and he kind of becomes the odd man out. Plus, he didn't healthy scratch and all that. It didn't look too good through the Blackhawks. I can see kind of why they were doing that because there's so many other up and coming people. I'm not talking just centers. I'm talking the entire forward crew. So then you've got Kurashev and who's the other one? Suter, Pia Suter. That did play center, but would they be better prepared, better on wing? Maybe, right? And then you have Henrik Borgstrom and Lucas Reichel coming into the ranks. If they do get signed with the Blackhawks, they could possibly be centering potential as well. Not signed with the Blackhawks, but with the Blackhawks next season. So I didn't know who to choose for number three. I think it'll probably one of Suter or Kurashev, more than likely. And if you watched the show last week, you're going to know that I'm picking David Kampf for number four. I think that he's just the number four guy. He's good with the faceoffs and defensive responsibility. So that's kind of where I'm sitting.
All right, sounds good. Do you know how much of a percentage rate you're getting out of his next contract yet, Gail? Have you guys negotiated that?
No,
yet?
we're still negotiating.
You're selling him more than his own agent is right now, so he should fire whoever that is and hire you. Brooke, what do you got for opening night centers come October?
I'm kind of with Gail. I don't really like this question because, in my opinion, I think the whole center group can be just imploded and redone again because it's really hard. It's very hard to pick. But I said my first three would be Toews, Dach, and Kampf out of just generic reasons. But then the fourth one kind of stumped me. So I said either Mackenzie Entwistle or Evan Barrett. We saw Mackenzie Entwistle a little bit towards the end of the season this year, and he looked like he could be a good player maybe. And Evan Barrett, obviously we haven't seen him yet, but those two are considered to be high center ranking prospects in the system. So I expect that those two will probably be in competition for some type of role in the bottom two lines. So I think maybe they could be a factor, but it's hard to tell because I expect a lot of changes to be made. So I don't know who's going to be on the roster. We don't know.
Yeah, for sure. There are definitely still a lot of uncertainties, and maybe this is a question we can revisit come September when we kind of know where we are when training camp starts. Shaun, if you had to go for based on right now, who you picking for opening night?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, collectively, us and the entire fan base wants to see Taves back, and I'm obviously one of those folks too. But based on who's there right now, I sort of want to take a peek at that and assume that everything kind of mirrors into when we do start next season. You guys have all mentioned great prospects, so I expect to kind of find their way in and out of the roster, similar to what they did this past season, getting players in and out, moving around the lineup. But with all of that said, to me, I want to reward Suter. I want to give him first line minutes. I want to get him up there. He had a great season. I think he deserves that spot. I think he played well with our stars, and he would be a great fit up there. Second, for a lot of the reasons already noted, would be Doc. He's the future face of the franchise. He didn't come in and impress too much through that latter half of the season when he did come back, but obviously he's the guy that we got to give some minutes to and see what he's capable of and get him comfortable with the players around him. I'm going to put Strome on the third line there, simply because he hasn't earned a top six spot, even though his paycheck says he should be up there, but I still want to see what he can do. So I'm going to throw him on the third line, see if he can earn his way up into the top six, or at the very least, prove his way out of this lineup altogether. And then similarly, he, as much as we praise him, and Gail in particular praises Camp, he deserves all of that praise, but we still find a way to just slot him into the fourth line because he does well there. So I'm going to say that he's owned that spot, and he should stay there, and he should start the season there, and he should get all the minutes he can right there and not move from that spot.
All righty. Yeah, I'll go, obviously in a perfect world, Jonathan Taves is back on the ice and playing opening night, and that would serve huge. He could almost be like a coach on the ice, and I would have him and Doc in your top six, whichever way you want to do it, interchange those guys. But then I would also definitely give a long look at Borgstrom and Reichel. If either one of those guys, they both have experience at center in Europe, and see if they can slot in. And if you have a guy like Jonathan Taves and Kirby Doc, those two can work with those with Borgstrom and Reichel and really help their development along. So maybe if those two guys, youngsters, are there, you can kind of swap them out on three. I don't think Dylan Strome's going to be here opening night. I know he's on the roster now, but I just don't think Jeremy Colleton wants him to ever play center. So even if he is here, I don't really pencil him in there. As you guys mentioned, we have Suter and Kurashev that can play the position. I think personally Suter might be better off at the wing, but he played well at center. So obviously you can plug him in there. And then we have Kampf, who still needs to be re-signed. I think he probably will. So whoever is here come October, there's definitely no shortage of choices. Brooke mentioned Evan Barrett. I know the Hawks want to give him a look. He played both center and wing down in Rockford. So it seems like they like guys that can do both. They like the versatility, and that's a good thing to have on your rosters. We're seeing in the postseason, if you got guys that can jump to the wing and down the middle and be successful at both, you've got a pretty tough roster. So the more the merrier. Competition is good. So we'll see how that shakes down come this fall. Another one of our big storylines heading into this summer is going to concern one and two players who won't be playing for the Blackhawks or anybody ever again. We're talking about the contracts of Brent Seabrook and, to a lesser degree, Andrew Shaw. There's a lot of focus on if Stan Bowman is going to be able to move that contract of Brent Seabrook and get that salary cap space. That would be an extra $6.875 million completely off the books if he can make it happen. The problem is he's going to have to sweeten that pot a little bit if he finds a taker. Nobody's just going to take that. He's going to have to throw in a pick or two or a player or a prospect or all of the above. We've seen it in the past. I still have nightmares over some of these trades. What are you willing to give up to clear the Brent Seabrook, and maybe the Andrew Shaw cap space next year. Brooke, we'll start with you. How far are you willing to go to get that contract off the books?
I honestly think everything should be on the table at this point. I don't think any player on this team should be considered safe. You have to do what you have to do, even when the choices are hard, but this is a situation we're in. So I think Stan should do whatever it takes. But I was looking back on what we recently did with Marian Hossa when we traded his contract to the Arizona Coyotes, and all we had to give up was a third, a fifth round pick, and Vinny Hinostroza and Jordan Osterley. So going off of that model, even though I know Hossa's contract was a little easier to deal with than Seabrook's, I would probably say go down that route too. Third and fifth round picks. I would think maybe they'd want a good defensive prospect like Ian Mitchell or something, or maybe even a lot of our center prospects right now, because it's getting pretty crowded, as we were talking about. Maybe they do want a Mackenzie Entwistle or a Barrett, or I don't know, but I think we might have to part with some prospects for sure. And like I said, I don't think anyone should be safe. Just keep going.
We got Mackenzie Entwistle in that Marian.
Yeah, we did
too. Just so it was kind of fun seeing him and Hinostroza back this year. Shaun, what's your limit on getting rid of these contracts?
Not very high. I got to say that I'm not really willing to give up that much. I totally get where there's a benefit to freeing up cap space. Obviously, we all do, but I still am such a believer in recognizing the present state of this team and knowing that freeing up this cap space to seeing what they can put it towards, if that's on a bigger scale, they're just not there yet. So if it's going to be at the cost of losing assets or prospects or potential early round picks, I'm just not willing to do it, because this team needs to still be working with what they have, seeing what they can get out of it. Where that potential is, because I don't think we saw the full potential this past season, although they surprised in a lot of ways. I'm just not willing to lose any of that yet. Brooke mentioned late round picks. Sure, I'm willing to deal with those. Or if there's a win-win scenario where perhaps it is a Strome that ends up going the other way because it makes sense for the team that's getting them, and somehow they can find a way to package that, then fine. But I know beggars can't be choosers, but I'm not going to beg for this contract to go away if it's at the cost of our assets or prospects.
All righty, Gail, what's your thoughts on this subject?
All right, so if they can free up enough money to really get a true number one center, then I think that I would be willing to give up maybe Ian Mitchell or Nicholas Bodine, maybe Adam Boquist. No, not Adam Boquist. I take that back, not him. But Wyatt Kalynuk and Riley Stillman, those two are keepers. Don't do anything with them. There's a lot of assets there. If there's forward they're looking for, maybe Adam Gaudette or Alex Nylander, if he's healthy, would be expendable. And of course, Strome, like we talked about, but he's of course not very marketable right now. Of course, yes, you would have to throw in some top draft picks and probably get thrown in there. I'm not a general manager and I don't want to be, but it certainly will be interesting to see if Bowman can do something, make something happen.
Yeah, I think I don't think we need to stress too much about this, because there isn't the desperation. The worst case scenario, you keep both these contracts if you can't move them, and you put them on long-term injured reserve, and it essentially still comes off the book. It doesn't give you the flexibility in season as it would, but I don't think the Blackhawks are really in the position to be worried about that. I still have nightmares over the giving up Teuvo Teravainen to get rid of 1 year of Brian Bickle, but that's a different situation. The Blackhawks were desperate to win another cup and keep that window open. That's not the scenario here. So I say, let this play out. We'll get more idea after the expansion draft on which teams are looking to tear it all down and start from scratch. Those are the teams that would want to take on the salary of a Seabrook contract. So I'm going to give this warning blanket statement to the Blackhawk fans this summer. I don't think it's as simple as Bowman's plan for this summer, whatever that may be. I don't think it's as simple as going from point A to point B and you're done. I think to get from point A to point F, you got to make 6 or 7 moves along the way to get where you want to, and they probably won't happen in logical sequential order. So nobody freak out this summer until it's all over. See the whole picture. Don't jump to conclusions after one move, because there could be 5 or 6 other moves that follow it. So everybody just breathe in. I've been doing yoga the last couple of weeks, and everybody just take a deep breath and relax. It's going to be okay. All right. Moving on from contracts we need to get rid of. Let's talk about goaltending. We've again talked about this a ton this season because, hey, there was a lot to talk about. We've seen that Kevin Lankinen established himself during this shortened season as the starter, but we still don't know if he can do it for a 82 game season. So that will be interesting to keep on. There was some goaltending news during the week. The Blackhawks brought in signed Arvid Soderblom out of the Swedish hockey league. If you're not too familiar with him, he's a 21-year-old. He had a 2.03 goals against average and a 922 save percentage in 22 games in Sweden's top league. So he's a good prospect, but he's not someone that's going to be factor in this year. He's going to stay in Sweden. So we don't have to worry about him just yet, but that's another prospect. We needed him because we lost Matt Tompkins, who was with Rockford the last couple of years. He's actually heading to Sweden. So it's almost like making a trade. But my question heading in again to the season, are you comfortable with the goaltenders the Blackhawks have? Or would you like to see Stan Bowman this summer bring in a veteran, not a guy that's going to be here for the long term, but just one of these veteran goaltenders to kind of push Kevin Lankinen or Colin Delia, whoever is going to be that starter, kind of push and maybe mentor since we have such young goaltending. Shaun, of course, we're going to start with you on the goaltending question. So what do you think?
Yeah, I was shocked to see my name come up on this one. No, I'm more than happy for Lankinen to have the reins and to run with this role. Speaking of veteran presence, before last season, this one that just passed, I was making a case. I even wrote about it as far as getting a veteran in for that reason to sort of help the young guys along. But now that they are where they are, and Lankinen, albeit not an actual full 82 game season, has had a full season under his belt, I just don't see the need anymore. Again, given where this team is, let's keep that in mind that they're not yet fully there. So where they're at, the fact that Lankinen had a full shortened season, so to speak, to me, I just want to see him have the reins and run with it. And like you said, if it's him and Delia that are the tandem going forward, they're going to be tight-knit enough already that they can kind of bounce ideas off each other, work with each other. And this group has veterans around them. I know that it's not a goalie veteran presence, but there's enough veteran presence in that locker room to still help these guys and mentor them and show them the ways that Lankinen doesn't need a veteran goalie to come in at this point. He already did the job last season. Now we just got to give him a full slate of it and see what he can do.
Sounds good. Gail, what do you think about goalies? We're good where we're at, or we need an extra body there?
Absolutely. I think I would love to have a veteran goaltender signed on. If they can manage it with all these other priorities that they have, which that could be another story, whether they can manage it. But if they can, I think it would be ideal. Lankinen is potentially your number one goalie, but he's more of like a 1B or 1 backup at this point, or not a backup. So, having a veteran in the fold would give a little bit extra security. Like you said, it would push Lankinen. It would allow him to either prove himself or not prove himself. But then the Blackhawks might be in a little bit safer place. We leaned on Lankinen this past season, and we saw that down the stretch, it really kind of took its toll. And that was with a shortened season. So 82 games, I think that I would feel more comfortable if they could get that done. Like you said, something short term to just kind of tide them over and be a security blanket of sorts.
For sure. Brooke, what's your take?
Yeah, if possible, I would like a veteran goalie. When I was looking at the free agent list, I saw that a goalie like Chris Dreiger on the Florida Panthers is going to be available, so that could be an option. But I think that veteran goaltenders to me are kind of like veteran defensemen. You need them to help the rookies. And I do like Lankinen, but I don't know if he's going to be our true like starter going forward. I don't know if he can technically be relied on in that way. We don't know yet. So I would definitely want a veteran goalie to help this team out, because we kind of went from, we did have a lot with Crawford and Leonard to all of a sudden having nothing, and we do need something now. So yeah, I'm all for veteran goaltending.
Yeah, as Gail said, it's all going to come down to dollars and cents. And, as we just talked about, clearing that cap space. If you can get somebody, I'd be in favor for it. I'm not great about going with the Delia Lankinen tandem per se, because if somebody does win that job, then you still have a young goaltender that's not playing regularly. And if you have that veteran backup, then you can send whoever doesn't play back down to Rockford to actually play, something that Delia didn't get a chance to do. Or if Delia comes out and wins the starting job in Lincoln and can go down there and fine tune on a game and play every night, as opposed to sitting and watching and playing once every 5 or 6 games. I'm not talking about bringing in a $5 million goaltender. I'm looking at guys that are at the tail end of their career that are going to be cheap, and then they know what the deal is, that they're coming in to play 20 games and to be a mentor to these guys, because there's a lot that goes into being an NHL player, especially at goaltending. And it's a lot more than just what happens in between the opening face-off and the final horn. There's so much about preparation, off-ice stuff, that maybe a guy like an Antti Raanta or James Reimer or Jonathan Bernier, guys who have done it for years, can come in and help these guys, and it won't cost a whole lot of money, and these guys know they're not going to be the number one. And then, God forbid, something happens where you get a rash of injuries, at least you got a guy that you can depend on that has done it before. So those are the type of guys I'd look at. But if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be the end of the world, because as Shaun said, they're not a goaltender away from really being serious contenders. So it'd be more of a luxury than a necessity at this point.
Definitely.
We'll give you thank you. We'll give you a quick reminder that if you're watching on Facebook, please click the like button, and over on the YouTube channel, hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our Blackhawk Banter episodes and any of our shows across the board. We have a lot of fun stuff going on. A bunch of teams have their own shows. We have an NHL Rumors show, did a draft prospect show the other day. Plus we have Chicks with Sticks, all of our female writers getting together and talking hockey. I love to see that. Good stuff coming out of there. So make sure you're subscribing and like so you don't miss any of that. And don't forget, audio only versions available wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, so we're talking about the off season. Let's stick that way. Again, these are going to kind of wrap all of it up. It's going to be an interesting off season, but now I'm going to put all of you guys in the GM chair for a moment. And out of all the unrestricted free agents, if you can sign one, money's no object, salary cap, whatever, but you want to get one guy here in the Blackhawks, who is that one guy out of all of them that you covet? And Gail, we'll start with you. Who is your top free agent prospect target if you're Mrs. Gail Bowman this week?
Okay, I would go out and get defenseman Dougie Hamilton from the Carolina Hurricanes. And I think that if the Blackhawks are going to be a true playoff team, they need a number one defenseman, and he would be that guy. However, this is a big splash. That would be a big splash. And, Bowman rarely does that. He's probably going to take more conservative approach, maybe go, if he does get a defenseman, go with somebody that's a little bit older, that's willing to take a shorter deal, because Dougie Hamilton would definitely, be looking for long-term. He would cost a lot of money. I know you said that, in a perfect world, don't think about money or anything like that. But, it sure would be awesome if Bowman kind of went out on a limb and did this. And also because I think that he would fit in real well. He's a right-handed shot, and everybody else practically on the Blackhawks is left-handed shot. So he would fit in real well, and gosh, that would really bolster the blue line.
That's a good choice. Brooke, who's your number one free agent?
I picked Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I know that that's a long shot. I know that Edmonton is probably not going to part with him, but that was the first name that stuck out to me as someone that this team actually genuinely needs. For a while, I kept harping on the fact that the Blackhawks need to update their third and fourth lines. But now, looking back, I feel like now we have way too many third and fourth line players, and we need to focus on the top six. So I think someone like him would definitely help Kane out tremendously. It adds more depth, more scoring, more face-off wins. I'm all for someone like that. But like I said, I know it's a long shot, so I guess someone else I would really love is Taylor Hall. That's a long shot too, but hey, someone like any of those players in the vicinity, I will take.
Can't go wrong there. That would be a pretty good fit for sure. Shaun, who's your top free agent target?
Yeah, listen, a little tongue in cheek. I know there's a lot of big names on this free agency list, but I'm going to say Matthias Janmark, and I'm going to say that simply because I just don't think, my theme this show, we're not one move away from pushing the needle to the point that it needs to be pushed for this team to be contenders. I'm not saying that they can't be competitive. They were this past year. I want to see them do it again next year. Absolutely. But I know you said money's not an issue, but it will be an issue at some point down the line. And I mean, we're talking, one of the questions is how can we free up cap space? Well, I'm not willing on that end to go and spend a bunch of it for a year that has a lot of uncertainty around it. So Janmark is going to be due for a raise. We know that. But, I really enjoyed seeing him in a Blackhawk uniform last season. So there's definitely sincerity there. Again, I understand there's players that are much higher touted than Janmark. But for me, he's the first name that came to mind. I want to see him back in Chicago. He's not going to cost as much as some of these other guys. And they're not one player away from being contenders. So bring him back and let's get his veteran voice in the room.
Mr. Hat Trick.
He might have
Mr. Game
outpriced.
7.
He might have outpriced himself with that Game 7 hat trick. He may no longer be that affordable guy. Someone's going to overpay for him, I think, this year. Hopefully, he's okay after that big hit Sunday night. I actually went along with Gail too. I would love to see Dougie Hamilton in a Blackhawks uniform. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, I've always said he's kind of overrated, but that doesn't mean he's bad. But he's exactly what the Blackhawks need. They need that number one defenseman. Problem is, he's a right shot, offensive-minded defenseman. There are now 31 other teams that want him too. So he's not going to be cheap. It's going to be hard to get him. You'll definitely have to clear that Seabrook and Shaw contract if you even want to start talking to him. But that would be my guy. We'll see what happens. The market may not be as high as we think it is because we don't know when that salary cap's going to go up again. And Elliot Friedman reported over the weekend that it may stay stagnant for 5 more seasons. So that might actually be in the Blackhawks' advantage. That might drive that price tag down, or at least the term down. Guys may only want to take a couple years and then retest the market in 3 seasons if that salary cap's up. So we'll see. Another name to keep an eye on that I'd love to see in a Blackhawks uniform. Let's see how this Seth Jones drama in Columbus works out. He says he's going to test the free agent market. He's got 1 year left on his deal. So that may force the Blue Jackets to maybe look for a trade. So maybe that's a way you can get that young. He's not as good as Dougie Hamilton, but I'd certainly take him in Chicago. So let's see how that works out.
Those would be great
Defense, that's what we
negotiation
need.
tactics, going in with Dougie Hamilton or Seth Jones being like, well, you're overrated, but we need you. And Seth, you're great, but you're not as good, but still good.
That's why I'm not a GM. I'm too honest. Let's break away from the Blackhawks. I know this is the Blackhawks banner, but we could talk about other things here. It's been a rough few days in Edmonton, that's for sure. First, they got swept out of the playoffs by the Jets. Some people shocked by that, others not so much. And then after that, a few days after that, they learned that their greatest player ever, Wayne Gretzky, is leaving the organization to take a studio analyst job with TNT here in the States as they begin their NHL coverage next season. That's a very interesting move for sure. So I know TNT does a good job bringing in former players for their NBA coverage, but what do you think? How do you guys think the Great One is going to do when it comes to breaking down the game via a studio chair? Brooke, what do you think of Gretzky on TV?
Well, isn't Eddie Olczyk, didn't he get one with TNT too? I think he just did. I think he just got a 5-year deal. But my point is that actually him with Wayne Gretzky, I think would be entertaining. When you're thinking of hockey, there probably isn't a perspective that you would appreciate more than Wayne Gretzky. So I definitely think that will be a good move. I don't really think I've ever seen him in that kind of role. So that will actually be kind of fun, even for newer and up and coming hockey fans that are kind of learning about the game. And like I said, you can't get a better perspective than his. So I'm all for it. I think it's great.
Shaun, what do you think about the Great One going south of the border for some American TV?
I'm looking forward to it for your guys' sake, especially, getting him front and center is not a bad thing. As Brooke said, I got to just back on that. It is the Great One for a reason, right? How can you not want to hear his perspective? How can you not want to hear what he thinks and what he has to say? And the only thing I'll sort of say with caution is I certainly hope that they let him be genuine and let him be who he is. He's a humble guy. We see clearly a lot of him in Canada, I know worldwide, but when his personality shines through, he can be quite entertaining. I don't expect his humility to go away, but I want to be able to see him react genuinely and not be overly rehearsed. That's the only thing that I'm sort of worried about. I just don't know if they're going to put any confines on him or make him go a certain direction. So if we can see a true perspective from the Great One, there is no better perspective. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, it should be good. I wouldn't worry too much about that because based on their NBA studios with Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley, they kind of like those guys be themselves. So I would hope that would be the same with the NHL coverage. Gail, what do you think about Gretzky on TV?
Yeah, I'm gonna echo the same things. I mean, who doesn't want to hear what Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player ever, has to say? Most interesting man in hockey, right? So he certainly knows what he's talking about. Player, coach, front office, now broadcasting. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's
it's not
party.
a bad, definitely not a bad move. Obviously, it's it's a good PR ratings move, especially if they were trying to open up into a new audience, their NBA audience. It's like, hey, Wayne Gretzky, I know that name, I know that guy. Even someone who's never watched a hockey game in their life has probably heard the name Wayne Gretzky somewhere. So it's a good move there. Be interested to see what he does. A lot of times these all-time greats, though, they may not be the best at breaking down games because they never really had to do any of that hard stuff because it just came so easy to them. That's why a lot of those like all-time greats in any sport usually don't get in the coaching because they never had to really listen to a coach because they were just so damn good. It came natural. So it'll be fun to see if he can tell me why you need to lift a stick here or board battle there. Let's see what happens. Or is he just going to be like, hey, this is a good goal because of this, because that's what he knows. So I'll be watching no matter what. So it'd be interesting to see who else they get in that studio. I know who I don't want on either ESPN or TNT. All you gotta do is follow me on Twitter, and you can find out that Mike Babcock shouldn't be anywhere near a broadcast studio. And
I don't think he will be after this year.
Yeah, I don't
God,
think
he is just so boring. And you can leave Pierre Maguire and his junior stats in Canada, as far as I'm concerned, too. All right, let's wrap this up here. Speaking of Canada, speaking of playoff coverage. By the time this show airs, it's going to be Tuesday morning, and we'll have finally all of our second round matchups set. Of course, we're recording this just before face-off of the big Toronto-Montreal Game 7, so we don't know who's going to be there. And even though we have a couple series, well, all the other series have already started, there's still plenty of former Blackhawks in the mix to keep us interested, if that's kind of your thing. In that Boston-New York series, you still have Nick Leddy on the Islanders. If the Canadians win tonight, you'll get Philip Deneau, and Michael Frolik is still on the Canadians, though I doubt he'll play. In the West, you still have Brendan Saad, Carl Soderberg, and Dennis Gilbert, all part of the Avalanche organization. So they lead in former Blackhawks. Of course, we mentioned Matthias Janmark and Robin Leonard. They're both on Vegas. And they also have a ton of guys that played for the Chicago Wolves over the last couple of seasons. So there's definitely connections there. And finally, in the Central, Carolina, of course, Tavo still breaks my heart. And Jan Ruda is on Tampa Bay. So those are your former Blackhawks. So let's just go quickly. We'll wrap up our second round predictions. Yes, these series have all started. Yes, we don't even know who's playing the Winnipeg Jets, but we'll make that prediction, even though it will be old and stale by the time this hits the airwaves. But let's just go around, make your prediction for Montreal, Toronto, and then give us your 4 series outcomes, how you see them coming. Shaun, we'll start with you and your ballsy pick of the Canadians to win tonight, right?
Yeah, no, not quite. First of all, go Leafs go. You're welcome to everybody who is watching and all of my fellow panelists. I was this close to wearing a Maple Leafs jersey, but I thought not the time or place for Blackhawks banter. But I did add my little signed Maple Leaf stick just to make sure it made an appearance there. So obviously I'm going with the Leafs tonight. As far as the rest of the series go, I'm going Islanders over Bruins in 6, Hurricanes over Lightning in 6, Golden Knights over Avalanche in 7, and the Leafs over the Jets in 5.
Righty. Gail, what do you got going for our second round?
Okay, I do think that Toronto will win tonight, or it'll drop tomorrow. Not that I want them to, Shaun, but
Oh, come on.
In the East, I'm rooting for the Islanders, although I think the Bruins will probably win 5 games. The West, oh my gosh, last night, what a lot of bad blood going on. But I honestly, I don't know who to root for here because I really like both these teams. I just think that it's going to be a kick-ass series. Excuse my language. 5 or 6 games, probably Avs will advance. Okay, so I think there. And the Central, I'm so on the Hurricanes bandwagon. Even though they lost game 1, I also think this is going to be a phenomenal series. And I'm going to say Canes in 6, maybe 7.
All righty. Brooke, how are your predictions looking for second round?
Well, I'm a big Islanders fan, so I am rooting for them, although I truly don't think they're going to win it. I do think that the Bruins will probably take them. I'm going to say 5. And the Avalanche, yeah, I do think the Avalanche are going to steamroll Vegas, and I'm going to say 6 for that one. And I am rooting for Carolina so hard, but some tells me that Tampa's going to take that series if they can't figure out Andrei Vasilevsky. So I'm going to say Tampa in 7, I think. And I do think in my gut for tonight's game 7, my gut kind of tells me that the Canadians are going to win because they've just been on a roll the past few games, although I am rooting for the Maple Leafs. So we'll see, though. We'll see.
Fill that gut and change it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, Shaun, you're not going to like my picks. I'm taking the Canadians to win game 7 solely based on game 7, Carey Price, Jack Campbell.
Yeah.
That's kind of an easy decision right there. So that's what I'm going on. Sorry. But then I have revenge. Winnipeg Jets will beat the Canadians in 6 games. I have Boston over the Islanders in 7, even though I don't want to see it, but I got to go with my head here. I have Carolina beating the Lightning in 7. And I picked the beginning of the season, I picked the Colorado Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup. So I have to, and listen, through 5 games, I'm looking like a pretty smart guy, not to pat myself on the back, but they look unbeatable right now. I think Vegas will get a couple games out of that series. 6, the Avalanche will take down in 6. That's if everybody's still alive by the end of that series. That was pretty ridiculous by the end of that game right there. So should be fun no matter who wins tonight. And as we move forward, it should be 4 really good series. And that's all I really want. With no Blackhawks, just entertain me, guys. That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Blackhawks Banter. Thanks again to Gail, Shaun, and Brooke for joining me tonight. You can follow all of us on Twitter. You see it right there on the screen. Don't forget to like the Facebook page, subscribe to YouTube, hit follow or subscribe on your podcast provider. And we will see you guys in a week. Thank you so much, everybody, for checking us out on Blackhawks Banter.